The best of E3, which was also the worst of E3, was 2015. The announcements for that one included Final Fantasy VII, the remake. Remember, 2015, for those of you keeping track of the Final Fantasy VII remake. Fallout 4, which was highly anticipated after 3 and New Vegas. And the Xbox One backwards compatibility announcement. So all those things happened in 2015. Now, if you're in the gaming world and you just heard me say those things, you're already laughing. Defeated by delicious mankind. Summer is in heat. Gross. And we didn't cover E3 this year for the first time in DBDFP history. Why, you may ask? What is E3, you hopefully don't ask? Who are you people? And how did I get sent here for my recommendations? I also hope you really don't ask. But we have all the answers to those questions. Also, we have Punch and Pie this week on DBDFP. So this is episode 156, and thank you all for joining us. This is NEDTJ, Ned the Janitor, or Eric Allen, obviously, if you know me, on DBDFP. The mug of the week, I just want to get that out of the way, is Dwight with Bears, Beats, and Battlestar Galactica. I really hope that zoomed in properly because I can't see it right now. But we are going to talk this week about E3. I know E3 already happened. Like, if you're watching this, like, yeah, I know. Oh, also, the shirt of, like, this week, which there's not a shirt of the week. I'm not doing that. But it's my Raccoon City Police Department shirt, and nothing bad could happen when you wear one of these. Stars. Almost nothing bad can happen to you when you're wearing the shirt. Anyway, we're going to start talking about E3, and I want to throw some history at you. If you're not really familiar with E3, E3 is basically a convention every year that happens that discusses video games and all the new hype and the new stuff coming out this year, next year. Like, all the big companies used to come out and talk about really exciting things, like what the PlayStation 1 price was going to be, like in 1995. And it looked like, it honestly looked like one of those like alien conspiracy conventions with the quality of the video and people up on podiums and really poor PowerPoints. It was kind of amazing. But that's some history for E3. That's like the roots. Like, it really was this great thing that was just for gamers, the community, the gaming community, and to build up a lot of these things for investors and potentially to just get credit on mainstream news for what's going on in video games in the industry. But with other history that we're going to go through, not like, the boring kind, although the ancient alien history stuff is cool. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be like the totally fun kind of history that's unprovable and that you can have in the background while you're playing Cards Against Humanity. So I guess it's exactly like Ancient Aliens is what I'm saying. Anyway, let's talk about the beginning research. In 2011, people were literally making videos asking E3 to send them tickets for free to go because of how passionate that they were about video games. And I'm gonna send a link in the description. If you're watching this and it's not live, I will send a link in the description for this. But there were people who were just like sending videos. It's not even set. It's actually a decent video that I saw from a couple of people, and shout out to them. I will. It's called A Plea for E3. I played off of that title for this one. It's kind of an homage to these guys because they left it up, which, I mean, that's pretty awesome that they had the gall to keep that up, even though people would probably make fun of them or be like, oh, well, E3 sucks. But at that time in 2011, everybody knew E3 was the place to go. If you love video games, that was where it was at. That's where you wanted to go. So they put a video out, and many others, clearly showing they trusted E3 as an entity that would provide them as video game lovers with what they wanted. It was like an exciting multi-day centered, video game centered day around their passion. So that's kind of like, when we look at what from 2011 to 2015, what E3 was, every year it was becoming bigger and bigger and bigger. Esports were getting bigger. Everything was getting bigger. It was like iPhones, like technology. Like there was the e-shoe and like the e-jacket and like the e-car. Well, there was an electric car. Most of what I just said was false, but there was an E3 hype about like everything that was going on in the video game industry. It was like Christmas. And I've heard that many times, that video game commentators would call E3 Christmas for gamers. So this was like a huge deal. Like, E3 was actually really cool. So, like what happened? Because this was like a plea for E3. I gotta say, I haven't seen gamers beg like that since Bayonetta. Don't look that up if you don't know what I'm talking about. That's not a G-rated reference. Anyway, the best of E3, which was also the worst of E3, was 2015. The announcements for that one included Final Fantasy VII, the remake. Remember, 2015, for those of you keeping track of the Final Fantasy VII remake. Fallout 4, which was highly anticipated after 3 and New Vegas. And the Xbox One backwards compatibility announcement. So all those things happened in 2015. Now, if you're in the gaming world and you just heard me say those things, you're already laughing. But if you're not in the know, first of all, I don't know what you're doing here, honestly. And I don't know why your recommendation section sent you here, because we talk about books, comic books, video games, television, and movies here on Defeated by Delicious Fruit Pies. It's what we do. If you were sent here, it's not my fault. I'm not sorry. Just don't downvote it because I didn't do this. But you might stick around and learn a little bit about E3. So, you can always hang in there and tell me what you think about it later. Anyway, let's go back to the E3 in 2015. Imagine if I could only... I'm not doing that. There was shouting, there was cheering, there were hordes of not yet undead gamers swarming stages to touch Todd Howard's robes, just his robes, not his feet. He's weird about that. But much like Palm Sunday and that story, if you know what that is, E3 2015 was a portend to a darker future. So a future of watered-down Fallout dialogue responses, Skyrim's 15th installation of the same game in that remake, although I still bought it on the Switch and played all the different quests for the... Don't judge me. Don't judge me with your eyes. I don't care. And anyway, and then Final Fantasy VII, the remake, being completely scrapped, only to be revealed again years later with disappointing episodes they're going to release. And then they're also changing, they're doing it while there's a changing of the console guard. So the next generation console is probably going to end up being the one that you would like to buy FF7, the remake, on. My recommendation, don't buy it twice. But who am I? Sony, I'm sure, would be thrilled if you did that. In short, E3 2015 was full of secrets and lies. Secrets and lies! Like what the smoke monster was at the end of the Lost series. It's unforgivable. Anyway, someone told me recently that a piece of them wanted to rewatch Lost, and then a piece of them did not. And I told them that a piece of me didn't ever want to watch Lost again, and that piece was 100% of me. E3 2015. That's where we're at. So, Secrets and Lies killed the excitement of E3, and I don't think that the fact that leaks were coming out in drips and drabs on YouTube were really why E3 started to decline. I really think it was broken trust. Remember, hopefully, if you have not seen Batman from the 80s, like with Michael Keaton, not Batman Returns, Jack Nicholson, Michael Keaton, where Joker's standing up on a big float and he's throwing money at everybody and he's like, hubba, 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 who do you trust? Who do you trust? That was E3, essentially, in 2015. And then everybody got gassed by Joker gas and started to die with giant smiles on their faces, and Todd Howard disappeared for at least 6 months until he could come up with a way to spin how Fallout wasn't really that bad, and then proceeded to try to feed us Fallout 76, which I'm not even going to bother making a video on because so many other people have done a great job at that. This isn't even, I don't even digress. This really is the issue. Trust was broken. Trust was lost with E3. So before, tickets were sold out infinity days prior to the events. And it's not like you can get E3 tickets very easily, and there's press pass stuff that goes on still, but a ton of people didn't believe the leaks before that were going on. We heard that Sony was going to release a Zelda game that was going to have Link and Cloud, fused together Dragon Ball Z style and start, killing everybody. That's not... Nobody believed that. Stop trying to make Dragon Ball Z, Final Fantasy VII, and Legend of Zelda crossovers. Nobody's going to buy it, just FYI. Anyway, so that was never really a thing. People didn't buy those leaks, and people waited to see what the announcements were in E3. So I was always annoyed by those videos. I hate those, what will be coming up in E3 this year? Here's 3 things I think will happen. I don't care. I'm going to wait 2 days, sometimes 24 hours. I'll find out exactly what it is. Why do I need to watch your video? Anyway, I don't know. That I do digress, and that just annoys me. But People waited for the real information to come out in E3 until the real information that came out in E3 was not real anymore. So, with only a few big trusted companies failing to match the hype that they created at E3, and I'm looking at you, Bethesda, Microsoft, and Sony or Square Enix, whichever, it was destined to decline. I mean, that's what happened. E3 fell apart. People stopped caring what they said. It was almost like a hype video. It's like, yeah, Metroid Prime 4 is going to be announced at this E3. I'd believe that about as much as if Nintendo came out and said, Metroid Prime 4 is coming out soon. Because it won't. It just won't. I know it won't. Nintendo. Anyway, Nintendo isn't really, they don't do that as much, but the other big companies do. My point is, E3 went on the decline because of 2015. 2016, it was like, meh. 2017, Sony's like, I'm not doing it. Or Nintendo's like, I'm not doing it. 2018, obviously, Sony was not there. They did their own pseudo-release, which was awful. And then this year, there was kind of a mix. And Nintendo did a great job at E3, I think. And that also, we'll talk about that later. So, oh, how the mighty have fallen. Insert Dark Souls reference here. I'm not doing this for you. There's a great channel that you can subscribe to and you can look at that has Dark Souls memes. I will link it in the description for you people who are not watching it live. It's really funny. I subscribed to it recently. It's like really, I laughed out loud. I didn't lol. I literally laughed out loud several times watching these videos because it's like really funny. So anyway, sorry, not showing up at E3 only made... Oh, yeah. So anyway, so Sony not showing up at E3, it only made sense because they didn't have anything new to say. And that's okay, but it also tells me that they're not feeling the pressure to have something to say for E3. And I'm sorry, if you're not growing, you're dying. And if you don't have anything interesting to say for a year, either you're talking too much January through June, or you're not working hard enough. And I'm not saying that as like a slam against Sony. It's a slam against Sony. I'm not saying that as a slam against Sony per se. I hate that phrase. Per se. Is it like Percy? There's all kinds of things I could say about per se. Anyway, the idea is it's not necessarily bad, except for that, like, there should be a feeling of a deadline. It's like, oh, well, like, Microsoft has, like, another really big thing coming out for Halo. Like, we should probably respond with something from, like, Drake's storyline or something like that. We should do something. And, like, Nintendo felt, like, really good about their E3, which they should have because it was a blast. It was awesome. Not a huge fan of Banjo-Kazooie being in Smash Brothers, but whatever. Sony was just kind of like, meh, we're going to not be there. But then they were like, oh, we're going to have our own Sony announcement. So again, it's not like they didn't have anything to say. They just chose not to do it in E3, and that's dangerous. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit more. But, you know, when asked why they did not and would not attend 2019's E3, Sony's response was basically like, why would we? That's not a good sign. And so this is where Sony, I think, made a huge mistake, and it's going to hurt the gaming industry for years to come. For now, Sony sits at the head of the pack in terms of sales, like, you know, console sales, game sales, exclusives, like they're really good on that. And with the internet these days, you don't even need to leave the house. I'm not going to put a link to Aqua Teen Hunger Force, but if you haven't watched Aqua Teen Hunger Force, again, I'm not sure why you're here. Who sent you? Who sent you? Who sent you? Number 2. I don't really understand, but give them hell. But that's not why E3 is important, is it? Like, it's not important because you just have something to say, so you have to announce it. I'm going to give some comparisons because I've heard a lot of arguments for why it shouldn't matter that we record E3 and that we have a big E3 convention and that it gets recorded every year. Why should we bother filming the Super Bowl? Like, it's just a local venue. Most people aren't going to attend that in real life. And, you know, what's it going to do for the NFL to spend their time, money, and resources advertising and showcasing these two teams going at it for a championship when obviously those two teams would advertise themselves being champions? What's the point? Let's get rid of the Super Bowl, right? Because E3's gone. Let's get rid of the Super Bowl. We don't need E3. We don't need the Super Bowl. Here's another one. Why bother showing a Thanksgiving Day parade at all? Why bother? Why would these advertisers even bother going in for the Macy's Day Parade? Movies, like if you look at like there are places that are cheaper to record the parade. They could probably put it down at some place in Indiana or Oklahoma. Yeah, again, not slamming Indiana or Oklahoma, but you have cheaper towns than Manhattan to put a parade through. I'm sure we could just record it, right? Just let's record it and do a Macy's Day Direct online. We don't need to be there live. Who cares if you're there live? Nobody cares to be a part of that. Why drop the ball on New Year's? Who cares, right? Like, we don't need a New Year's celebration at Times Square. What does that do for anyone? It's just the new year. We could probably do a live stream and just have everybody go and watch a digital ball fall in some random pool of something not related to video games. No big deal, right? We don't need a live ball drop. We don't need a live Macy's Day Parade. Why bother with movie theaters? Movies will definitely get a ton of hype without people getting one location into them and then like watching them in a theater with a bunch of weirdo strangers. Why would people go into a physical theater to go see a movie with a bunch of strangers? Like, it's so antiquated. Besides, movies that go straight to Netflix and straight to Blu-ray, those movies totally make the same amount of money as, the last Avengers movie, right? Totally. We don't need to have movie theaters to hype up all these big movies, right? There's a huge operational word that E3 provides the gaming industry, and it's absolutely essential, I think, for the continued improvements and innovation of the video game technology. And I hope you've caught on to it already. And it is, you said it. If you said something else, you're weird, but like hype was the word I was going to use. The word was hype. So the hype train, the hypodermic shot in the arm, the hypester movement, the massive hypopotamus that's in the room. We need this type of fuel, and that's what's going to allow investment for new and risky ideas that audiences are excited for more of. I'm not sorry for the puns. You deserve this. I mean, you're here, you're like, what? Like, you're 20 minutes into this episode. Like, you deserve this. And they're punny. It's punny. Anyway, I'm not going to be hypocritical by sitting here and saying this stuff, but when a company bows out of a huge show, and they are, we're going to get people and their money to spend it. Like, obviously, these people have optional money. This is your entertainment dollar. So people are optionally spending money on your companies. When you opt out, you're not the only form of entertainment and art that people could put their money into. When you bow out of that, it really does make you a hypocrite. Hypocrite. Puns aside. Without hype, the video game industry will lose the excitement around innovation, trying new things, and thus it will run the risk of stagnation. It's not that it's going to like fall apart because people don't participate in E3, but it isn't just the fans that need to get excited to spend their money, although we do. It's the investors and the CEOs and the CFOs of these companies that need to feel the burn that they should take risks to strive to do more for people and new, exciting, innovative ways to entertain people in an actual physical room where you see people literally screaming and running and jumping around and having the Pip-Boy bobblehead on their head, which was probably super hot. Not as hot as it is in here, but super hot, and trying to touch Todd Howard's whatever. That's a thing. It really is important. Like, we should have this once a year. We should have this Christmas in June. We should have people come together and get investors excited, gamers excited, and CEOs and presidents of companies that, maybe they don't know everything about video games, but they need to see that, look, there are people out there, thousands of people who are so excited that they're just running to the door to see what's new in the video game world. It's a very close-knit community. The one final thing I will say about this, and this is kind of something I tacked on after I made my notes for this, and yes, I made notes. You will notice that I was looking down a few times. I made an intro and I made notes. Any other suggestions that you have for me, defeatedbydeliciousfruitpies@gmail.com. I do appreciate them. I really do. And I read them, and I hope that you see that I hear what you're saying. But another thing that came up was focus groups. Every time people pay money to go to E3, and they sit in a giant room where they're having questions and answers with panels of producers, developers, directors of major studios. What do you think that is? It's like a built-in think tank. It's a focus group that paid to see you. Would it not, for example, and I want to give this very specific example because it's near and dear to my heart. I loved Fallout 3. I didn't love Fallout New Vegas. I know, and people hate me for it. I've gotten negative comments about it, whatever. I don't care. Everybody can agree that Fallout 4 fell short of Fallout 3. Graphically, beautiful. It was fun. I ran around. I spent a lot of time going through it. I 100%ed it. Again, props. Speaking of trophies. Really enjoyed all of the DLC. Far Harbor was excellent. By far, Harbor. The best DLC I think that a Fallout game has had. I really, really enjoyed it. Nuka World was okay, but Far Harbor was just excellent. It was a great DLC. But here's the thing. All of the criticisms that you'll hear, like the Quartering Give or RGT85, or the Angry Video Game Nerd, all these people, really, I agree with the critique that it was watered down dialogue. And the fact that you didn't have a survival mode until later with Creation Club and things, and on the computer, that doesn't fly. I played it on the console. I play all my Fallout games on console now. I don't care if Bethesda gave me Fallout 1 and 2 for free, which they did, and I appreciate that because I pre-ordered Fallout 76 and they realized they boned us pretty hard. So that was cool. But I play my games on a console, and for that, having no condition or repairing system for my guns and my armor, it was watered down. How hard would it have been, instead of saying, oh, we're announcing Fallout 4, by the way, it's coming out in 2 months, and here's a mobile game that you can play, which was awesome. Fallout Shelter was awesome, and I did everything you could do in that. That aside, what I'm saying is, how hard would it have been, instead of announcing that you will release it in 2 months, to say, we're releasing this for the spring of next year, but everybody who's here right now is going to have an hour and a half where they get to play this game and give us real live. We're going to do a survey at the end. If you give us the answers to all our survey questions, we're going to give you a free bobblehead, random plush or whatever, something, a pop, whatever, something. How hard would that be? You have a captive audience. They're obviously invested in the franchise. They paid money to be there, and you're not taking advantage of their opinion? Look at the Sonic the Hedgehog trailer. I know. It's 2019. It's current year. I never thought I would say something like, look at the Sonic the Hedgehog trailer. But here we are. Here we are. Here we are. And if you looked at that trailer and then the response to that, what did they do? They pulled it back and said, we're not releasing it now. We're going to wait, and we are going to fix Sonic because he looks like trash and he's actually making kids cry because of how creepy he is. And we're going to make it look more like the Sonic that you literally know, love, and trust. The only Sonic character. How hard would it have been for Bethesda to do that and then find out, oh, people don't like our watered-down dialogue. Maybe we should make it more like Fallout New Vegas, which is the one thing I will give New Vegas over Fallout 3. The dialogue options were fantastic, and they did faction work much better, I think, than Fallout 4 did. Even though it came out after. Right, Dwight? I was playing Wii Play with Dr. Ocelotopus. I totally kicked his butt. So he decided to eat the controllers. What are you going to do? It's like Babu from Archer. You just can't always control him. Anyway, yes, so that's my example here is, I just think that they could have used E3 to their advantage. And even Xbox, hey, we're going to do backwards compatibility. If you're here at E3 live right now, you can write down your top 10 games that you would like to see be backwards compatible by the end of this year. How hard would that have been? Later release date, a schedule of releasing, but use the audience you have. We're here, we're paying money. People were begging online to be on E3 because they wanted to see what was going on. How hard was this, guys? Really, how hard was this? We can be using E3 to our advantage. So, I don't think E3 should die. I really don't. And us not covering E3, and I see Chris on here, he commented, and I didn't have him on here this week or this month to go over E3 because we just decided not to cover E3 because it really wasn't exciting. Again, Square Enix, great job. Nintendo, great job. You really did awesome job. And I think they kept E3 alive for the next year. But my thing is, I want everyone at E3 next year. Your Kickstarter projects, anything. So petition your Kickstarter projects, the heads of them anyway. Petition your company presidents, petition the CEOs of your favorite gaming companies, and make sure I see you at E3. That's all you need to say to them. Make sure I see you at E3, or I'm coming after you, for real. And if you haven't seen the show Mutant League, the cartoon, I recommend that you do look that up. And I'll wait. Nah, just kidding. I have no patience for you people. You look it up on your own time. Anyway, we are going to get to the mailbag. Mailbag. Because I promised I was going to do that last week, but then we went way over because I was like really into video games and movies or based on video games or based on movies or based on video games or based on anyway. Don't look that up on Wikipedia. We had a Wikipedia free episode this week, and I just want to do a shout out to Wikipedia for not being a part of this episode this week. Thank you. It seems that whenever I use you, I get downvoted. So thank you. Thank you for everything you didn't do. So anyway, mailbag. I have Jason X336 ask, why defeated by delicious fruit pies? I'm assuming you're talking about the name of the podcast. I actually get this a lot. And defeated by delicious fruit pies was very deliberate. We actually came up with this. It was one of the first things when we were talking about this back in 2013 in the Wayback Machine. Right, Dr. Ocelotopus? He was here with me, by the way, when that was going on. If you look at episode 3 on YouTube, which I don't recommend you do unless you're like into super cringe videos. It's really old, but whatever. I had really crappy equipment. But if you watch that video, in that room that I was in doing that video with Tim, Dr. Ocelotopus was back with us back then. He's been with me a long time. But anyway, in 2013, when we were kind of like kicking around this idea, it was actually probably 2012 into 2013, we were kicking around like, what do we name this podcast? So we wanted something that was going to be, a good enough name where it would be nerdy, it would be centered around books, comic books, video games, television, or movies, but like that nobody had used before. But we wanted something to be a meme or a tropey that would like work for people. And so what we ended up with was Hostess had these fruit pie commercials. And I know for those of you who are longtime listeners, you've heard this already. Too bad. Anyway, Hostess would be advertising in comic books, like Spiderman and like the Avengers, like the old school comic books. And so what would happen in the comic, because it was an advertisement, but it was like a comic strip where you would have like Dr. Doom or like some Captain America villain being caught up in a trap that involved a Hostess fruit pie, like a lemon pie or like a cherry pie. And at the end, they'd be like, "Drats, I've been defeated by a delicious fruit pie." And we thought that was really funny. We thought that was pretty cool. So what we ended up doing was making the podcast called Defeated by Delicious Fruit Pies. So that's how we ended up with the name. I've loved it. I love defeated pies. I love defeated by delicious fruit pies. I like all the things that we can do based on that. And it's really been a blast. I mean, what Ned the Janitor has to do with that? Nothing. I mean, that's been a name that I've used for a gamer tag since like I was on Diablo 1 on battle.net playing Warcraft 2 and Diablo 1. On battle.net, I was Ned the Janitor or Ned TJ or Ned the J. And if you see Ned the Janitor, Ned the J, or Ned TJ anywhere online, it's me. Or it's a doppelganger. So Ned the Janitor was based off of Mace the Dark Age, and that had a secret character that you could use. Lord Demos was the regular character, and if you put in a code, you can actually make him turn into a janitor who had a push mop, like a push broom, and beat the crap out of people with that. And that's why if you look on Twitter, which I recommend that you follow us on Twitter, at DBDFP, there's a picture that I posted from the Switch when I was playing Breath of the Wild where I found a mop, and I have Link standing there with my Ned the J. I have a Ned the J username on the Switch. I totally have him with a mop. So that's the Ned the Janitor. So that's why it's NEDTJ on DBDFP. It flows off the tongue. It's really easy. You can do it. Say it with me. NEDTJ on DBDFP. Sounds like a new t-shirt idea. Anyway, thank you for that question. That's a great question. We also have Mary and Lou 38. I don't know if that's two people or you just wanted Mary Lou, but you couldn't get it. Will you do more conspiracy videos? No! Yeah, no, I'm not doing any more conspiracy theory videos on the main channel. So on Defeated by Delicious Fruit Pies, I will not do that. I will be doing them on Subscribestar. If you don't know what Subscribestar is, it is like a Patreon, but not awful. And you can go on there, and it's exactly the same. You can like contribute $1 a month, $5 a month, $20 a month, whatever you can, whatever you want. I will set up tiers, but what I'm going to do is probably once a month set up a conspiracy theory video where I'll take something and do a ridiculous, obviously like BS conspiracy theory video. Like the whole point of this, I'm not looking to actually prove that the flat earth is real. And I'm not even taking that on as fake because plenty of other people have done that. But you know what I mean? Like I'll do something like a Helen Keller thing. And now that I've said her name, this video is going to get downvoted a million times. But that's why. Like I got tons of downvotes. I had a lot of negative activity go on YouTube just for saying conspiracy theory and for talking about Helen Keller. I did it again. What is that? Like hear no evil, speak no evil, see no evil? Or is it just don't hear, don't see, and obviously you don't speak, even though people say you did. Anyway, I'm not going to get back into that. My point is, that'll be where I play around with that. And if you really are interested in some long-form discussions on both, I'll do like deep movie interactions where I like go into why I love or hate a movie, and I'll do conspiracy theory videos, obviously faux conspiracy videos. But I'll do those on Subscribestar. But thank you. That's a great question. That's fun. I did enjoy it. I'm glad that you guys did too. Dark Stoley says, you missed the scene where Nicolas Cage dies in a ridiculous boat accident in Face Off. Shame on you. Sir Nicholas will not be pleased. Listen, if Nicolas Cage is watching these videos, number one, he's probably one of the people giving me a thumbs down, jerk. But also, he would know that like we did a whole Nicolas Cage fest or a cage match, and he knows how much we love him. He'll never be mad at us. He's like our spirit animal. He's my patron saint. If I could change my confirmation name, it would be Nicolas Cage. So he's not going to be mad at me. He can't be. Him and Dr. Ocelotopus are actually my spirit animals. So no, you're wrong. You're wrong, Dark Stoley. Although I am sorry, John Travolta and Nicolas Cage, for leaving you out of the best death scenes in movies. That was one of the best, worst death scenes ever. Plus, like, who died there, right? Like, Nicolas Cage took out John Travolta, even though John Travolta was Nicolas Cage for real because Face Off. Watch Face Off. The point is watch Face Off. Great death scene. And Shame for Clucks asks if Lawnmower Man counts. I'm assuming for a movie that was based on a video game that was based on a movie. Absolutely it does. Because if you look at what Lawnmower Man was, it was a movie about a guy who got sucked into a computer and all work and no play makes him a very bored kid. Anyway, the point is, that was great. And I'm sure there was a Lawnmower Man video game that was awful, but that's definitely something to put on the list. Now, what I did not include on that list is movies that were based on video games that belong in the Spider-Man 3 zone. And the reason why I haven't talked about the Spider-Man 3 zone too much these days is the Spider-Man 3 zone has actually been sent to Dimension X, and Krang and Shredder are trying to kind of figure that whole thing out and unlock it, but I have neutrinos on it right now. They're protecting it from Krang until we can pull it out from Dimension X. Hopefully we don't get the pizza monsters with that, but, you know, if you've ever played Turtles 2, you know how hard it is to get to the Technodrome. So we're working on it. We're working on it. He's basically Shredder at this point. He's not Krang. So anyway, that's all the questions and answers that I wanted to answer for this week on DBDFP. If you have other questions that you would like to send in the mailbag, please feel free. defeatedbydeliciousfruitpies@gmail.com. As always, you can please like the video. Please like this if you're watching this as recording. Subscribe to the video or to our channel. We are almost at 1,300 subscribers, but I'd love to get us at the 3,000 point. We are almost halfway to the number of hours of watch time that we need to be monetized, which, again, it's not about the money, but it is about how cool that is, and it does put our ranking up. So please tell a friend, share this with your friends, share this with your enemies. We will smite them for you if you share it with them. So share it with everybody. I don't care. I get enough downvotes from like randos from the UK about some stuff with Helen Keller. So just send this to people that you know and force them to watch it. You can actually put it up on a projector in a classroom if you're watching this from college, and I know most of you are. Or even in high school, you could force people to watch it with your phone. When you're on the bus, when you're on a train, when you're in a box, when you're with a fox, you can have them watch DBDFP and Ham. Wait, am I going to get sued? In lawsuits that you would get from Dr. Seuss, would everything rhyme? That's a real question. I want to know. Anyway, answer that in the comment section. Please comment below. If this is your first time watching this, you are a DBDFP virgin and not a veteran. We like comments, we like likes, obviously, and we like shares. So put those in there in the comments section. I'd love to get your feedback on this video, on what I could do for next video, and if you'd like to join on for next week. Chris, if you're watching this, and you know, I know you are, you feel free. We can do next week's. We're not going to talk about E3, but I would love to talk about things like Bloodstained, Ritual of the Night, and some other stuff. So it'd be nice to have somebody else on here besides me, just sitting here talking to myself in a room with myself. I mean, I'm never really alone with Dr. Ocelotopus, but half the time he wants to kill me. So anyway, that's all for now. Thank you all for joining us. This was NEDTJ on DBDFP, and I'm signing off. Rampage. Again, why? Here's a terrible, terrible game. And by terrible, I don't mean that it was not fun. It was fun. It was an arcadey kind of game. You smash up buildings, you eat people. It's great. You're monsters. You know, like Godzilla kind of stuff. There's no plot. What is the plot? So again, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson comes in. He's like, I'll do a movie based on a video game. Woohoo! And the rest is history. Apparently the rest is a $428 million history. They're never getting a dime from me. I will watch that on YouTube when it's as free as the Super Mario Brothers movie, and not a minute sooner. Because as much as I think that it's great to see a giant gorilla thing with Dwayne Johnson running through jungles and buildings, I don't think that's even true. I don't think anything I just said is true. So here's an interesting fun fact. Pokemon Detective Pikachu is the only live-action film based on a video game that has received a fresh score on Rotten Tomatoes. The only one. Films based on video games have garnered a negative reputation for their poor execution and poor grasp at the source material of the game each film is based on. This is according to Wikipedia, which I trust about as much as I trust Rotten Tomatoes. Here's why. Here's why. We're going to go through the next list, which is video games based on movies. I want to point out a couple things here because it's very interesting to me. The first thing that's interesting to me is the movies that it actually has, because I think it's pretty impressive, some of the games that it has on here. But the second thing is the things that it doesn't have, which is really weird. So the Three Ninjas Kick Back is on there. Not the Three Ninjas. There was a movie called The Three Ninjas. There was a game for the Game Gear in that movie. There was a video game based on that movie that had the video game in it. Then there was a sequel, Three Ninjas Kick Back. This lists that video game and not the first one. So we're off to a great start, is what I'm saying, basically. Wikipedia is amazing. I mean, I want to go over a couple of things, because, by the way, this list is not exhaustive, but it's still over 500 entries long of movies that had video games made after them. I mean, it's just insane. But let's just take a stroll down the list, shall we? Addams Family Values is first, then the Addams Family video game, and it doesn't say the years for those. Then you have Alice in Wonderland, the 2000 video game. You have Alice in Wonderland, the 2010 video game. What you don't have is American McGee's Alice or Alice Madness Returns. Now, you might be saying, well, Eric, that's because the Alice in Wonderland movies didn't come out until after 2000. Aha! That's what you think, but there were really low-quality Alice in Wonderland movies made before that. Might I remind you that there was this certain company, let's say, start with a D. They make lots of cartoons. They had a pretty big movie based on Alice in Wonderland. What was it called? Oh, Alice in Wonderland that Disney put out. That did have American McGee's Alice character that looked basically like that Alice. So it was based on that Alice in Wonderland. This list is terrible. And we're in A, okay? This is A. They have Alien, 1984 video game, Alien 3 video game, and Alien 3: The Gun. But not Aliens. And not Alien versus Predator that I can see. Nope, no Alien versus Predator. They have Alien Trilogy, like that's a thing, except for they didn't want to put aliens until later on they go Aliens, Alien 2, which is not Aliens. Aliens, the computer game, 1986 video game. Aliens, the computer game, 1987 video game. Right. Anyway, Alvin and the Chipmunks is on there. The Amazing Spider-Man, 2012 video game. And The Amazing Spider-Man 2, 2014 video game. But it doesn't have the newest Spider-Man game, which is apparently the best one. I mean, I haven't played it. But I'm just going to throw it out there that The Amazing Spider-Man, not that good. The new Spider-Man, that good. So, again, this list is... nah. It's just trash. So it has Angry Birds Rio as one of the video games based on a movie. An adaptation for Angry Birds that has the characters from the movie Rio. Do you remember Rio? 98% of you don't. It's okay. It was just a stupid bird movie. Arachnophobia is on there, though. That's cool. But it has Back to the Future, list of Back to the Future video games, Back to the Future 2 video game. Not Back to the Future 3. And not the Back to the Future Telltale game, which was really good. And this is not a new page. I mean, can we talk about Wikipedia for a minute? I was told by one of the lovely members of the DBDFP crew that maybe I'm being too hard on Wikipedia and asking too much of them. But I don't really ask for much. Just that it acts like an encyclopedia. It's not like I'm sending them regular quarterly emails saying, we can't survive without your donations and we don't do advertisers and that's why we... it's not like that. I'm not asking for stuff like that. I mean, who would do that? Who would do that, Wikipedia? So if Defeated by Delicious Fruit Pies doesn't get donations and you don't subscribe to us on Patreon or Subscribestar, we're going to keep creating content, just FYI, and we won't even ask for your yearly contribution of $50. Right, Wikipedia? But I asked too much of you, so I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I asked for you to put Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 on your list of video games based on movies. Anyway, let's keep going. There's Batman, Batman and Robin, Batman Forever. There's even Battleship, the 2012 video game. They even have the Beetlejuice, and it says video game, but obviously we all know it's the NES game. And here's what's interesting. They show computer games on this list, but they don't show the computer game of Beetlejuice, which I actually liked better than the Nintendo game of Beetlejuice. So the video game of Beetlejuice on the computer was awesome. You walked around using the keyboard keys, and you used spacebar to do your shot. And you had to do a couple things. So you had to eliminate the enemies on the board, and the board was like a chessboard. And you had Lydia walking around, and you had these the characters that are basically in the Nintendo game too, mostly from the cartoon. I don't know if you know this. If you don't know this, you're welcome. There was a Beetlejuice cartoon, and it was very funny, and it was well drawn, and it was a decent cartoon. So this was based more on that. And so the best weapon, obviously, was when you could take your own head off and it goes across the board completely and comes back. So you could double hit enemies, and that was really useful. But you just walk around and you'd take out all the enemies on the board. You'd have to avoid them because they could hit you or whatever. Some shot things, some didn't. So you had to make sure that you shot when they were walking and not get hit by them. So it was just the whole thing. But that's not on this list. It's not on this list. RoboCop is not on this list. RoboCop. It's clearly based on the movie. Look at this is Murphy from the movie. This is not from the comic book. This is clearly from the movie. It's a great movie. RoboCop's a great movie. Does this look like Bob Hoskins to you? Just FYI, I just want to throw that out there. Does this look like Bob Hoskins? I didn't think so. This doesn't look anything like him. He's a redhead. Mario's a redhead. At least when he has firepower. Anyway. Big Trouble in Little China's on here. Blade and Blade 2 are on here. Blade Runner's on here. You have Bram Stoker's Dracula. But you get into some of these other games, and it has the third of these. It even has Constantine. I can't. It has Demolition Man, the video game. Now, what's funny about the Demolition Man video game, if you have the DVD of Demolition Man or the VHS, it actually advertises the video game in the before scenes. Like, like, yeah, you have to rewind all the way back to the beginning. Well, okay, so the VHS is a thing where you had to rewind it all the way back to the beginning because it was a what we call physical medium. It wasn't digital. So you had to like actually physically rewind the tape. It gets to the beginning, and then you have to watch all these stupid previews and things before you could start the movie. So Demolition Man on VHS, which I have, it advertises this really bad-looking video game. The movie's amazing, so the video game, not so much. Dino City, the game. What movie? What Dino City movie? I don't know. Dirty Harry, the 1990 video game. I'm sure that's a Peach, not Princess Peach. We have Dragonheart, which was an awful game. And, I mean, let's be real about the movie. It wasn't fantastic, but it did have Sean Connery as the dragon. And a dragon Sean Connery back in the day was, we took what we could get. That was some cool stuff. It wasn't Liam Neeson getting stabbed with a light blade, but, it was pretty cool. Enchanted, Eragon, the video game. Yeah, so we have all these. Fantasia, the video game. If you're looking at a game and you're like, well, I know, we'll make this game based on a movie that is just a cartoon rendition of music. And the game is not a music game. That's Fantasia. You can rent it now at your local video store. Then we get to Fight Club. Now, I had to look up Fight Club because I never played Fight Club, a video game. Because here's the thing. Define irony. Making a video game to capitalize on a movie that makes fun of the materialistic world of possessions and capitalizing on everything. So who are you selling this video game to? Like, I was looking at that. I'm like, I have to look this up because I have no idea who the heck this is even selling this to. Like, I am Jack's great sense of irony. Anyway, in the game, it's just the fighting. It's a fighting game. It's like a crappy Tekken. Look this up on YouTube. I might put a link in the description. I might not. It depends on how good you are. But look at Bob in the video. It's so unfortunate. Everybody's so unfortunate. Only Irvin looks the same as he does in the movie. Everybody else just looks really upsetting. I mean, I know that it was for like PS2, and I think Xbox, original Xbox, not even Xbox One. But still, there's no excuse. There's just no excuse for this. It is so bad. The Fight Club game really was just a crappy version of Tekken, or like a Soul Calibur game that had no soul and was very low caliber. So anyway, that's the Fight Club game. This was just really cringy. Then we're only in F right now. I skipped a little bit, I know, I'm not sorry, but so you have all these games like Godfather. It did have Goldeneye 007, thank God, because that is actually one of the best games for the N64. And it's not, I would never argue that Goldeneye was one of the best James Bond movies. But, I mean, Boris was awesome. But it was not the best James Bond movie, and in fact was one of the best N64 games. Without that mediocre movie, we would not have had hundreds of hours of fun shooting each other on couch co-op and competition, looking at each other's screens going, I know where you are. And living off of body armor and karate chopping people to death with Odd Job. I mean, like, you wouldn't have any of these gems had it not been for Goldeneye. So, thank you, Goldeneye. There was a Grease video game. Did you know that? I didn't know that. I still don't know that. There's a Halloween video game, although it doesn't say when it was made, so I don't know if that's even really true. It's just the thing. How to Train Your Dragon video game. That was as good as the movie? Question mark. There's a Hudson Hawk video game, which you can argue both sides of this because some people argue the Hudson Hawk was a really funny movie, and some people argue that it's on the same level as Bruce Willis's musical career. And yes, Bruce Willis has a CD. Yeah, he has a CD. You can look it up. I'd say you're welcome, but I'm not sure you're going to thank me. But there's a Hudson Hawk one. Hulk video game. Just Hulk. Not the Hulk. Not a year. Not a system. Hulk video game. Awesome. The Hunt for the Red October, the 1990 video game, that was actually okay, and the movie was fantastic. So that's one of the good ones, where the movie and the video game were on par. You had John Wick Hex. Remember that one? Me neither. When did this come out? What is this system? Who has John Wick Hex? I mean, isn't it just like Keanu Reeves just killing everybody? What's the video game? You're in God mode the whole time? Like, do you have to like put in cheat codes to not make him invincible? How do you make a John Wick game? He just wins, no matter what. Plus, like, I don't want to see the beginning intro scene because that dog was really cute. Judge Dredd, the 1995 video game. Stallone had some video games, right? Like, that was pretty cool for him, and just not the rest of us. Now, here's an interesting one. Jurassic Park Builder. Jurassic Park 3, the arcade game. Jurassic Park 3, Danger Zone. Danger Zone! Jurassic Park 3, Dino Defender. Jurassic Park 3, Island Attack. Jurassic Park 3, Park Builder. Jurassic Park 3, The DNA Factor. Jurassic Park Interactive, and Jurassic World Evolution. No Jurassic Park for the Sega Genesis, or the Game Boy, or the NES, or the Super NES, and no Jurassic Park 2 for the Super Nintendo. How is this a comprehensive list? I do not feel like I'm looking at an encyclopedia of video game movies. Wikipedia. Karate Kid's on there. Kung Fu Panda is on there. Played that game. That's trash. Labyrinth, the computer game. So this is, again, you have this computer game. Why not other computer games? Also, Dungeons and Dragons was not on here. And there was definitely a Dungeons and Dragons movie. I'm Damodar. Remember, I mean, if you haven't seen that movie, I can recommend that. And I don't care if it hurts your health. It's totally worth watching the Dungeons and Dragons movie. It's really funny. The Last Airbender. There's a bad movie. So even if the game is bad, it just, that matches the source material. Lego The Hobbit video game. Not Let Go of the Hobbit. Lego, like Lego people, The Hobbit. Like they had Lord of the Rings games, but Lego. Lego Jurassic World, Lego Marvel's Avengers, Lego Movie 2 video game, no Lego Batman. There was actually a Lego Batman movie. No Lego Batman game listed, even though there is definitely a Lego Batman game. Cool. But anyway, that's pretty bad too. Stargate for the Super Nintendo, that's a really fun video game, and it's a really good movie. There you go. But it was based on that movie, and it was actually pretty good. And Stargate had a lot of really great source material too that I think they used very well with Stargate SG-1 and a bunch of the other Stargate series like Atlantis. So I'm not really upset about that, and I think the video game really does it justice. So that's actually pretty good. I feel good about that. It's like warm and fuzzy inside. Like, oh wait, no, I'm just thirsty. Okay. Ah, that's better. No more warm and fuzzy. Just fuzzy. I must have touched fuzzy and got dizzy. So you also have all these Lord of the Rings games, which the Lord of the Rings games were actually pretty good for the most part. The ones that were for PlayStation were pretty cool. The RPG style games. I remember those when the Lord of the Rings movies were out. Those were pretty decent. And you know, if you played Shadow of War and Shadow of Mordor, which guess what, are not on the list. Those are very good games. I mean, they're really, really good games. And while they're not directly based on the Lord of the Rings movies or The Hobbit, they are definitely in the same environment and feel the same and have the same animations and things for like a cave troll looks the same in the game as it is in the movies. So they actually did a really good job there. I thought that was like a really fun video game based on movies. Mad Max, The Mask, you played that. I know you did. There's at least 3 of you on here that I know have definitely watched that and then played that. Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, the video game. Here's the weird thing about the Power Rangers video games. They were really good. Like, imagine Turtles in Time, but with, like, the Megazord. So, like, not only did you get to fight using these stupid ninja moves, like a Final Fight, kind of like side-scrolling, beat-em-up game, but you also got to fight with a giant, like, robot thing, like Godzilla style, against a giant monster. they were really fun. The Super Nintendo Power Rangers games were really, really fun. And, you know, if it's Power Rangers, this is not a good movie. This is not a good series, but this is a really good video game. So, you know, this is why we have to rate this. And I'm going to need help from everybody too. And you'll have to comment later and we'll talk about this in a minute. Monty Python and the Quest for the Holy Grail. How was that a game? When did I miss this game? Monty Python's Cow Tossing? What movie is that based on? Monty Python's The Meaning of Life video game. What? There's these games out there. Doesn't tell me what system. Doesn't tell me what you're doing. Nothing about it. Just, thanks, Wikipedia. So informative. The Mummy. Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Not The Mummy 1. Not The Mummy Returns. Tomb of the Dragon Emperor. Yay! So anyway, we're like at M here, okay? Like, and this is such an exhaustive list. I'm already exhausted. But it does have Willow. Willow's really good. It has Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on here. And if you want to know all of the different things on the list, just go to the Wikipedia and you can look up movies that were turned into video games or video games were turned into movies. And that leads me to this last thing that I'm going to go over, and then we'll go over the rating system and how we're going to deal with this problem. Because it is a problem. It's a problem that we all have. It's a burden that we all shoulder together. There is another category in Wikipedia. Video games based on films based on video games. This category consists of video games which were adapted from a film whose adaptation in turn came from an original video game. There are 3. Number 1, Double Dragon for the Neo Geo. That system, the one that all 3 of you have. R, Ratchet and Clank, the 2016 video game, because of the Ratchet and Clank movie, because of the Ratchet and Clank game. And then S, Street Fighter, the movie, the arcade game. I'm not kidding. It's Street Fighter, the movie, and it was an arcade game that was made. Based off of the movie Street Fighter, based off of Street Fighter. I mean, what is going on here? Now, fortunately, they never made a Resident Evil based off of the Alice character, which was based off of the movies, which was based off of Resident Evil. It doesn't mean they won't. Maybe they'll do Resident Evil, Alice, Madness Returns, 98, The Reckoning, Neo, Genesis 3. And never make a prequel to those 2 movies. Maybe. And maybe they'll make games about those too. The point is, everything's awful. This is just the worst stuff that you can find. I'm not sure why this happens. I don't really get why video games are turned into movies for the most part, because video games are just really good movies where you actually get to play the main character. And I'm not really sure how they keep making these video games off of movies, because some of these, like I have Jaws, right, for the NES. I don't know if you're familiar with Jaws. You're familiar with the movie Jaws, right? God, I hope that's true. If that's not true, just click the X out of here. But yeah, so if you've seen Jaws, there's an NES game which is about what you would expect. You're in a boat. You're on a boat. You're on a boat, and then there's Jaws, which is coming after you, trying to eat you and kill you, and you have to like hit it at just the right time as it's coming for you, and you also have to go under and scuba dive. So it has these like little missions and things. But I mean, essentially, it's nothing like the movie because you can win, and you know, Jaws is just in all kinds of different scenarios. It's just not. How do you make a game that is based off of a very linear series of events? Like, so on the Atari, there's Super Empire Strikes Back. It's a game where you're just in like I don't know what it is. It might be an A-wing, it might be an X-wing, and you're shooting AT-ATs as they slowly crawl towards the front. There's a map. And sometimes you become invincible. There's weak spots on these things. But you have to basically shoot them over and over and over and over again without them shooting you to death and shooting you down. And you have to destroy these AT-ATs in an infinite loop to get a high score because Atari. But, I mean, yeah, that makes sense. It's the battle on Hoth. But it just, you didn't need any more of a plot point than that. The other game that this list on Wikipedia does not mention, by the way, is E.T., the extraterrestrial. It's rated as one of the worst, if not the worst game ever made. And E.T. is rated as a really, really highly critically acclaimed movie. So this is what leads us to our dilemma. What is worse? Video games that are made based on movies or movies that are made based on video games? Now, if you ask me from the Fight Club perspective, they're both awful because they're both trying to capitalize on one form of media into another form of media. So I struggled with this, but I wanted to really come up with something that made sense. We have to categorize like different areas that would make it terrible and why it's terrible, and then see in which category each one wins. So here are the categories that I propose. And again, feel free to throw in the comments if you have a different category that you want to put in here. But my one category is the worst, like the absolute worst, either video game or movie that is based on a movie or video game. That one that wins between the two. So in other words, if E.T. is worse than the like Lord of the Rings movie or game, like that's what you compare, like how bad the Jurassic Park video game was versus how bad like any of the like Wing Commander. Like let me just go over one of these, like the Super Mario Brothers movie. Oh, House of the Dead. How House of the Dead was made into a movie. Please don't watch the House of the Dead movie because it's really, I think it's like a 15-minute long movie, and they have these scenes where like it's the same exact shot of the same exact gun going off, but from like 6 different angles in slow motion, but it does it in sequence of every angle of the same gun over and over, and they try to mix it in with like other scenes of zombies getting shot by other guns, and it's so cringy. It makes like literally like a 30-second scene last for like 5.5, 6 minutes. Just don't. Do yourself a favor. So like one of the categories then is this horrible movie based on the video game House of the Dead worse than E.T., which is rated one of the worst games of all time based on E.T. the movie? So that's category 1. Category 2, just the sheer volume of terrible things that have been produced. So this means like more bad than good or more good than bad too. It really is important because you're comparing, like I have probably 2 pages of video games that were turned into movies. I have 500 entries of video games that were turned into movies, or movies that were turned into video games, and it's not even exhaustive. So, it can't just be like the sheer volume, but how much more, like how much longer in terms of hours have we all suffered from video games that were turned into movies versus movies that were turned into video games? So we got to take that into account too. The next category is more good than bad or more bad than good. So in other words, like, are there more bad video games based on movies than there are good ones? And are there more bad movies or video games based on movies, like vice versa? So the point is it better or worse in the sense that there might be like a Super Mario Brothers movie, there might be a House of the Dead movie, there might be a Resident Evil 3 movie, but there might be a Goldeneye game, and then there might be like, a Willow game, and there might be like, so we got to really look at like different games versus movies. Like, was the Max Payne movie so bad? Probably not. Was the Dead Rising game movie good? Yeah, I think the Dead Rising, it was, about what I would expect. Was the Silent Hill movie terrible? No. So we got to look at like, is there more good than bad? Because, and this is where it might be the reverse of the other. In other words, it might turn out to be that there are many more bad movies that were turned into video games than good ones. But it might also be that just in terms of ratio, there are many more bad video games that were turned into movies than good video games turned into movies. So we have to look at all these categories. We'll give each one like a 10 points, and we'll see how they stack up. So category 1, let's start out with the worst of the worst. So what's the worst movie that is based on a video game? And for that, I do have to look at some of these, because some of these are like, Mortal Kombat's not the worst movie for sure. House of the Dead's really up there. Like, it's really bad. The later Resident Evil movies are also really, really bad. The Postal movie's pretty bad. Let's see. Silent Hill's pretty good. Rampage I can't speak to. And Pokemon Detective Pikachu did get a fresh rating from Rotten Tomatoes. I don't know if that's before or after they started deleting people's negative reviews, but it did get a positive review, which is the only one to do that on Rotten Tomatoes. So there is that. That's something to keep in mind. Now, if you look at bad video games based on movies, like E.T. is probably like what you would consider to be your gold standard. It has no way to know what you're doing. He's really hard to control. It is a single button and joystick game. There are random items you collect, and we're not really sure why you're collecting them. So I'm not really sure. Like that's pretty bad. And Jaws was a pretty bad video game, I gotta say. But are they worse than the House of the Dead movie bad? I don't know. I mean, you got Beetlejuice, you got Batman here. I mean, there are a lot of good, and a lot of the Disney games actually, based on Disney movies, were pretty darn good. Gotta admit, the Little Mermaid video game for the NES, it's pretty good. Aladdin and the Lion King for the Sega Genesis were awesome. They were just really well put together games. So there's a lot of movies that made really good games, and I don't know that there's a game that's really, I mean, there's the Ghost Rider video game, but then again, Ghost Rider the movie was way worse. Like, I think the game was actually more playable than the movie was watchable. And some would argue the same for Hudson Hawk. The Jurassic Park games are really good. Spider-Man, I mean, Spider-Man 3 Zone, that's a thing, but the video games were always fun. Top Gun was really fun. Westworld, Willow was a great game. Young Sherlock, I mean, I don't know anything about Young Sherlock, but I know that Sherlock Holmes was a great movie, but it was also a great game. So it just seems that I liked Ghost Rider. Get out. There's no way you like Ghost Rider. That's not a thing. You can't say you like Ghost Rider. With Nicolas Cage, no way. I love Nicolas Cage. Ghost Rider was horrible. It was so bad. And I watched both of them, and I don't know why I did. But yeah, no on Ghost Rider, I'm going to have to say. But in terms of what the worst video game is, which I do think it probably is E.T. versus the worst movie, which is probably House of the Dead. If I had to pick which one would make my eyes bleed first, I'm still probably going with House of the Dead. That movie is so awful, and there's no payoff. There's never a time where you feel like this was worth watching. Whereas E.T., I can at least have fun making fun of it. I couldn't even make fun of watching House of the Dead. We were sitting there at Brad's house watching this movie going, oh my God, why are they still doing this to us? Like, it was like torture. Like, I may get a confession out of someone by having them watch this movie. Whereas E.T. is stupid, but ultimately it's pretty funny how stupid it is, and it is an Atari game, so you got to give it a little bit of credit. I mean, everybody's favorite Atari games still suck. I was playing Asteroids this weekend in Brooklyn, and it was like, this game is really hard and dumb to control. Plus, like, everything was in German. I don't know why that was. Like, why is Asteroids in German? Maybe it was just the arcade. I don't know. The point is, I'm going to award the 10 points of being the worst to House of the Dead. So movies that are based on video games so far have 10 points. So it's 10-0. The next one, sheer volume of damage that it's done to the world. Now, you could argue that with 500 plus entries of video games that are based on movies, there's a lot of filth in here. There's a lot of dumpster fires. And while that may be keeping us all warm at night, you have to remember, video games based on bad movies can still end up being good video games. Like Batman games, Spiderman games. But remember, video games based on bad movies have never been good. The movies have never been good. So, like, let's take just again Super Mario Brothers. I've played that game a million times. The movie, horrible. Double Dragon, can't even imagine. Street Fighter, I like it for the wrong reasons. It's terrible. Mortal Kombat, okay, it's okay. Tomb Raider movie, wow, really? Lots of the Resident Evil movies, really, really bad. Doom, horrible. Silent Hill, sequel, ugh. DOA, Dead or Alive, really? Hitman, so bad. So bad. In the Name of the King was really painful. Tekken, I can't even imagine watching that as a movie. That's just not a thing. Prince of Persia, again, I made fun of that already. See previously in this episode. Need for Speed, why? Assassin's Creed, didn't do it right. Tomb Raider again. Rampage, seriously. And Pokemon Detective Pikachu, the only thing I will say about that movie is Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie. That was supposed to come out this year. You know why it didn't? Because it was so bad looking that from the trailer they delayed the movie. That's how you know video games turn into movies is a bad idea. So even though there's a smaller body of work, if you look at total hours of suffering, I think that the Alice games, the Alien games, the Ninja Turtles games are fantastic. The Goldeneyes out there. There are hundreds and hundreds of enjoyable hours out there of video games, even to be played based on, movies that suck. But, all of that doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, I've suffered more at the hands of bad movies based on video games than video games based on movies. And since I'm in charge here of the numbers, I give it a 10. So now it has 20 points. It's going to be really hard to tie that up. So we'll go with the next one. The next category is more bad or more good. Are there more bad games out there than good ones based on movies? And are there more bad movies than bad games based on video games? Or more good than bad based on video games? I would say, just on the list that I have, which is the one I'm going off of, there are many more bad video games on that list than good ones. I've listed all my favorite ones, like RoboCop is really good. That is a great game. But then again, there are so many Harry Potter games out there, and every single one of them is terrible. And a lot of the Lord of the Rings games are bad. And honestly, every Lego game's the same. And I'm sorry, 3-year-olds watching this video, but first of all, your parents are awful people. And second, just for having you watch this, I don't know why you're watching this. And also, they're all the same. All the Lego games are the same. Break this, build this. You have more Legos, more characters. Did I just summarize every single game that's made with? I did. You don't have to answer that question. Whereas the movies, there are some bad movies out there. But number one, I enjoy Mortal Kombat. I enjoyed Street Fighter. Yes, I enjoyed the Mario Brothers movie, even though it's bad. Yeah, no, I see really bad movie Mario Brothers. I know, but I also enjoy bad movies. So I'm going to give that one to the video games, gets the 10 points. So now we're up 20 to 10. And that pretty much brings us to my conclusion. My conclusion about this, it is worse for us to make movies based on video games with a hope that anything good will come from it than it is for us to make video games based on movies and hope the same. The real lesson here is whenever you have Nicolas Cage playing Ghost Rider, whether it's the video game or the movie, we all lose. And I think that's an important lesson for us all to have. I hope you enjoyed this one. I really wanted to go over these differences. It was kind of just something I was toying around with. If you did enjoy this and you wanted to learn more about video games that are terrible or movies that are terrible based on these things, please feel free, write us defeatedbydeliciousfruitpies@gmail.com. Your comments and suggestions are always welcome. I had some really funny comments out here for some of these videos, and I don't know why you guys are deleting them, but they're really funny. I love the criticism and the compliments, but please send your submissions for any suggestions you have for ideas for future episodes. If you want, again, you could be on the show. It's fine. I mean, I'm trying to work it out with about 5 of you to be on the show, and that's great. I'm really excited about that. But anybody can join on the show. You just have to have a working microphone, camera, and internet connection. The internet connection is kind of important. It really doesn't work out well if you don't. And I really do need to be able to see you, or I'm going to make a really funny graphic for your face. So you don't want that. But again, defeatedbydeliciousfruitpies@gmail.com for all inquiries and questions. We've kind of gone over with all this stuff because I'm really into the analytics of this. But I'll answer some more of your questions next time. I may, in fact, have to make a mailbag because I'm getting too many comments and questions to put out in one week. Or I could just put it behind that Patreon wall and you'll have to pay like a whole $1 a month to watch this stuff, including my apology video. Otherwise, you'll never know that I'm sorry, because I'm not. All right, everybody. It's been great. Thank you all. I'll see you next week. And keep on keeping on some of your suggestions. And, don't talk crap about Helen Keller. See ya.
Defeated